Hey everybody, Marcus here. Anger is a commonly observable phenomenon within the MGTOW community. Anger of all sorts, of all intensities, really. So the accusation of being angry, it's also a very common criticism that's leveled at the MGTOW community. You know what I'm talking about. All those, oh, you're just a bunch of angry, damaged men who can't get laid. But there's another insult hurled at MGTOW that the community at large seems to associate with anger, and that is hatred, through the accusation of misogyny. Now, I suspect that the thinking of the common blue pillar, follows a certain chain of reasoning, and I also suspect that many people believe that if someone is angry long enough or intensely enough, then that anger necessarily transforms into hatred. So, when these blue pillars, these outsiders, see an endless flood of anger within MGTOW, well, they can only conclude that we all hate women, apparently. So the endless flood of anger, well, we kind of must admit, is there. If you just look at the comment sections of some popular MGTOW YouTubers, and you know what? It'll always be there. Because with each new man who takes the red pill, he may very well succumb to the red pill rage. There'll never be a point in which MGTOW is free of, these fresh red pillars. So angry men also tend to be quite vocal. But even if they are not a vocal majority, they're definitely the majority that is noticed. Because calm reasoning does not leave a memory the way that witnessing anger does. So in this way, external observers will have a memory imprint of mostly angry men. Also, as outsiders seem to see only the angry men, they conclude that it is true for all, or a majority so overwhelming that, a calm MGTOW becomes an exception. So combining this reasoning with this leap of faith that outsiders make when concluding that anger necessarily leads to hatred, we're also now all misogynists. Which is funny because even if anger did necessarily lead to hatred, there would be a distribution among the group of the objects of hatred. Some might hate women, some society, some the government, others feminism, and still others would probably hate themselves. But no, the outsider puts forward women as the only valid target of the supposed hatred. So this is not only funny but ironic. It's quite a curiosity of gynocentrism. You see, men, if you're gonna go hate, then how dare you not prioritize women for your hatred? But do we hate women? Well, to answer this, first we need to make explicit what we mean when we use the word. The dictionary definitions, it's not particularly revealing. See, all it says is that hatred is an intense dislike of something. That is, however, a very poor account of what hatred is. For example, I intensely dislike Justin Bieber. And despite of this intense dislike, I wish him well. So if we use the dictionary definition, we can say that I do in fact hate Justin Bieber, but don't want him harmed. So what kind of a pussy whip version of hatred is this? A hatred that does not wish to see harm to the hated object? This sort of hatred is like, like a snake with no venom. What kind of fucking snake is that? It's a belt. But what would happen if I wanted to see Justin Bieber destroyed? Would that still be hatred? Can hate both wish to see the object destroyed and not destroyed? See, if we use the dictionary definition of hatred, we seem to be left with a contradiction. Now, hatred is very different from intense dislike. Hatred is the desire a person harbors to see the object of their hatred cease to exist. Now, that's a manly and coherent definition of hatred. Not some pussy whipped, oh, I hate you so much. Now take your vitamins so you don't get sick. If you're gonna accuse MGTOW of hatred, then have the fucking decency of not pussifying it. But if I did desire Justin Bieber destroyed, does this mean I hate all men or all of humanity? Well, surely not. So now we need to put into place some sort of qualifier as to the scope that a man's hatred can encompass. So Let us say that my hatred, if contained to Justin Bieber, is called local hatred, as only Justin Bieber participates in the quality of, well, being Justin Bieber. But if I hate Justin Bieber because I hate all men, then my hatred is global. It encompasses all of men, past, present, future, on Earth, or any other planet or alternate dimension that they may exist in. So in this way, it encompasses Justin Bieber as well. So the question becomes now, does MGTOW desire all women, past, present, and future, on Earth, any other planet or alternate dimension, to cease to exist? Is misogyny, which is the global hatred of women, what MGTOW is about? Now, let us suppose that a man hates himself. Would it not follow, from how we have described hatred, that such a man would necessarily wish himself to cease to exist? Well, surely he would. And to achieve this, he would kill himself, would he not? Now, we have MGTOW alive today, and they don't seem to be killing themselves, so we can conclude that they do not hate themselves. Now, it then necessarily follows that MGTOW don't hate men either. I mean, if they did, and being men themselves, they would have killed themselves. So, do MGTOW intensely dislike aspects of their nature? Well, they surely do. I mean, after all, MGTOW call out manginas and white knights on their gynocentrisms. MGTOW also argue that gynocentrism is rooted in human nature. So this means that MGTOW are also gynocentric, but with great restraint, they choose to act against it. See, MGTOW do not hate gynocentrism, as it's a part of male nature. And so since we've already established that men do not hate themselves and gynocentrism is part of them, then a hatred of gynocentrism would require an annihilation of a part of themselves. Of course, this cannot be done without destroying male nature with it. So, if they were to hate gynocentrism, right, MGTOW would necessarily hate their own nature, and therefore themselves. So, since we've established that MGTOW do not hate themselves, then they do not hate their nature. With gynocentrism part of their nature, they do not hate gynocentrism. We just really, really dislike it. So when men rip into women for their gynocentrism, and rip into them we do, we do it out of an intense dislike of that aspect of human nature. But to accuse MGTOW of global hatred of women, misogyny, would necessarily require MGTOW to hate themselves as well. But if that were the case, then MGTOW would still not be full of misogynists. They'd just be misanthropes. So either MGTOW hate gynocentrism and are misanthropes, or they do not hate gynocentrism and are neither misandrists nor misogynists. Since MGTOW do not hate themselves, they are not misandrists, and therefore it follows that they are also not misogynists. So it would seem that misogyny is logically inconsistent with MGTOW. But if, however, a man has a global hatred of women, his reasons are not related to the ideas contained within MGTOW. Also, a man is free to have a local hatred for a particular woman, but again, this would not be misogyny, and also it would not stem from any ideas in MGTOW. Since the ideas of MGTOW are logically inconsistent with misogyny, it also follows that internalizing MGTOW ideas cannot lead to global or local hatred of women. You see, the message MGTOW tries to convey to men, it's much the same. It's much the same lesson contained in Aesop's fable, of the scorpion and the frog. So, if you're not familiar with the fable, it goes something like this. So, there's a scorpion sitting on the bank of a lake, and this scorpion wished to get to the other side of the lake. So he spots a frog swimming in the lake not too far from him, and the scorpion says to the frog, "Frog, yo, frog, come over here for a moment." So, the frog swims up close to the bank where the scorpion's standing, but he does not get out of the water. He's like, "Yeah? What do you want, scorpion?" Yeah, to this, the scorpion replies, "Listen, frog, look, I want to get to the other side of the lake, but I can't swim. Would you mind, if I climb on your back and you swim me across the lake, maybe?" And the frog replies, "You can't be fucking serious, scorpion. I know the kind of bullshit you're trying to pull here. I let you climb on my back, we start swimming to the other side of the lake, and then you motherfucker, you sting me. No deal, scorpion." Well, to this, the scorpion replied, No, 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 frog, 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 frog. You got it all wrong, buddy. That makes no sense. If we are in the middle of the lake and I sting you, then I'll drown as well. And the frog says, touche, scorpion, touche. So the scorpion climbs on the back of the frog, and they head out to the other side of the lake. And in the middle of the lake, however, the frog all of a sudden feels the scorpion sting, and starts to lose feeling in his body. So, sensing that he's about to go under, the frog asks the scorpion, Why, scorpion? You knew you would die too if you did this. And to this, the scorpion replies, I couldn't help it. It's in my nature. The warning in this story is the warning MGTOW have heeded and are trying to pass to other men. You see, if the frog in the story was a MGTOW frog, he would, first of all, asked what was in it for him for carrying that dead-weight scorpion on his back, and then realizing that in fact there's nothing to gain but personal risk, he would have told that scorpion that, as a strong and independent scorpion, he could just walk around the damn lake to get to the other side. Now, the MGTOW frog would have then happily swam away to his other MGTOW frog buddies, and had a beer. You see, at no point would the MGTOW frog give a second thought as to solving the scorpion's problems. He just wants to swim his own way without any dead weight on his back. It's the blue pill frog that is told where to swim by the scorpion, with dead weight on his blue pill frog back, and his reward? An early death. But even though we have proven that MGTOW and the global hatred of women, known as misogyny, are incompatible, we should perhaps explore how it is possible that so many people accuse us of this. I mean, to do this, perhaps we need to explore the existential phenomenon of the red pill. So let's try to paint a portrait of what experiencing the red pill is like. So a man will lead his life in such a cruel collection of beliefs, beliefs about the government and laws, about society, and, about human relationships. So what he comes to believe he likes and other things he dislikes, and as time goes by, he grows comfortable with his beliefs. He trusts them. Those things he dislikes, he'll just chalk up, as one of those facts of life that, just need to be dealt with. He'll arm himself against perceived dangers and develop trust for perceived allies. And in this way, he will live for many years. But one day, he may come to encounter red pill ideas. Those ideas at first will feel very alien. He'll resist them. His current beliefs are much safer. He spent all his life with them after all. And, they're comfortable, secure. He trusts his beliefs. In fact, he trusts some so completely that he has gambled his future on them. But these red pill ideas he encounters, it can't be dismissed so easily. I mean, they haunt his mind. They haunt him because they seem to explain more comprehensively his past experiences than his current beliefs do. Slowly he mulls them over and retroactively applies them to his past. They seem to explain a whole lot now that he thinks about it. Some red pill ideas he may have known in a slightly different form, and others just instantly become self-evident when they were pointed out to him. But as soon as this man has encountered enough red pill beliefs, the retroactive application of them onto his past starts to repaint his entire biography. Where he previously would have looked upon himself, as a generous man with women, he now sees himself, as the chump in a con. Previously, considering himself as brave, he now sees himself, as being merely disposable. This begins to piss him off. This reflection on his life inverts his self-image. His past breakups are repainted. The woman was no longer just a bad apple. She now looks methodical and calculated. Women's quirky behavior he used to just chalk up to an idiosyncrasy is now seen common in all past love interests. And they only differed in very subtle ways. The beliefs you had thrown so much trust into have now betrayed you. You realize they not only betrayed you, But they've been making a fool out of you all these years. But still it gets worse. These beliefs, these sacred idols, they were the pillars on which your hopes of the future have been standing on. Not only does your repainted past show you to be a fool, but your future plans collapse in on you at the same time. In one sweep, you are thrown into fear. Those things you so desired before the red pill, you still desire them, but you realize they don't exist. And though your intellect tells you they're merely shadows dancing on the walls, your emotions, those emotions you've been training all your life to anticipate these rewards, to build the foundation of your aspirations and happiness upon, those emotions betray you now in your time of need. Those emotions keep on desiring while your mind is trying to beat them back. A civil war begins to rage in your very soul. How? What started this war? What is to blame? Anger rages. Anger demands retribution. A great injustice such as this cannot be suffered. But what can you lash out on? Who is to pay for all this? Who is to blame? It's at this junction that the soul, enraged with righteous indignation, finally comes to realize, the great separation it has just undergone. All bridges have been burned. The newly forged red pill man cannot go back to his old life. The outcome of this civil war that rages in him will ultimately decide what road he takes. So Aristotle tells us that anger is the desire for retribution. Retribution for an undeserved slighting. Anger is connected to a man's sense of justice. He goes as far as to say that there's something wrong with a man who does not get angry at slights against him. And yes, my friends, the newly forged red pill man senses grave injustice indeed. But as with all the passions, there is a golden mean. So Aristotle tells us that we must be angry in the right amount, at the right time, at the right thing, for the right duration. Just as with courage, where one extreme is cowardice and the other reckless abandonment, so too with anger we must apply our virtues of temperance and prudence. But then, what golden mean should the red pill man strive towards? What is the right amount? What is the right time? What is the right thing? And what is the right duration? But before we can answer this, we should find out how that civil war of the enraged red pill man comes to an end. You see, in that internal struggle, his mind is telling him that the world his desires compel him to does not exist. But his desires still compel him, and doubly so, as now there's an urgency to overcome the mind. But what happens to the man who chooses women as that which to blame? His rage seeks retribution, but his target is nebulous, for it's not a woman who has slighted him, but womankind who have slighted him. He burns for a long time as his mind continues searching for an outlet to extract his retribution, but does not find one overtly. So he takes his revenge in secret. His resentment grows week in and week out, and in its ineptitude to revenge itself, he comes to think, I am good. I have done nothing wrong. And if women are the opposite of me, they surely must be evil. And with this inversion, he descends into hatred, in secret. But his revenge, this hatred, it cannot sustain itself on its own. For when it begins to fizzle and he no longer remembers why he hates, his soul is thrown back into that civil war that rekindles it. For as long as he sees women as his target, he will continue to live this life of bad conscience. This life of inner contradiction. His desire for women can never be resolved against his belief that the woman he wants cannot exist. He becomes the misogynist. He'll hate and rage for as long as he lays blame at the feet of women. He has put too much trust in women. He howls to himself, but all I want is an average girl. Nothing unrealistic. But there, too, he has held too much trust and has been unrealistic in his expectations. For he also wanted her to love as a man loves, to be loyal as a man is loyal, to be just as a man is just. And so in this way, with these expectations shattered, what is left in woman to him becomes abominable. But this is only one possible outcome to this civil war. A different man may, while repainting his past and present with the brush of his new red pill knowledge, he might find a woman who he cannot account for. Perhaps it is his mother, maybe his sister, grandmother, or someone who knows. This woman is not like that. So his mind labors to make this exception fit. For if there is one who is not like that, then surely there may be more. And if there is one, then it cannot be women who are to blame. This man chooses society to blame. Whether the laws or social norms or political ideology. In this man, the struggle between his red pill knowledge and his desire for women does come to a resolution. His desire for women overcomes his red pill knowledge. But he cannot quite go back to his blue pill beliefs. You see, he believes that most, but not all women, are like that. But it is society that created the ones that are like that. He becomes an MRA. His revenge is his overt action against those parts of society he believes are to blame. Some choose feminism, others Marxism, or the left, the right, laws, a mixture of any of these things. The MRA appeases his desire for women by reassuring himself that he can find a woman who is not like that, if only he looks hard enough. Some of his blue pill dreams are rekindled but in need of refining. He'll protect himself, but he'll not seek a completely new future. His anger has now been avenged with righteous fury upon society, and he's neither angry nor does he hate. And finally, a man who, like the MRA, found exceptions amongst women, took his time looking at those exceptions. He was nuanced in his contemplation of red pill ideas and how they would manifest themselves. And after much evaluation, he found those exceptional women not to be exceptional at all. Only variations on the same theme. Where the MRA saw his mother stay with his father through thick and thin, in some fantasy pure marriage, lasting till death do you part. This third man saw that same woman only stay with that man because she had no other options. In this third man, the Civil War too comes to a close. His reason wins out and conquers his desire for women. He does not, however, blame women. He, much like Aesop's fable taught us, asserts that it is nature, that human nature is to blame. He blames the male-female dynamic, gynocentrism, hypergamy, and so on. As he cannot revenge himself overtly on this nature, he, like the misogynist, revenges himself in secret. He opts out of this dynamic. He becomes MGTOW. He looks for a new future, a new way, a way that does not put him in conflict with this nature, his own way. Now revenged, his anger too subsides. The MGTOW man neither hates nor is angry. So as we have seen the three resolutions to the Civil War, so too we've seen three different men emerge. First, the misogynist, a man of pure passion, bestial nature, lacking nuance, lacking the ability to abstract. He deals only in what is immediate to him, and as such chose his target as something, tangible, banal, obvious, and superficial. His life will be the worst, and the lowest. You're full of hate and misery, fueled by this perpetually burning civil war in his soul. The MRA, more refined than the misogynist, he has some control of his passions. His thinking elevated from the mere primal. He's a man of activity who finds his purpose in the politics of life. He sees himself part of the larger social system and finds, honor and status and perhaps even power as the forces that compel him. His life takes place in a higher plane of understanding than the misogynist. He cannot be satiated by the mere pleasures of the passions. His life will be better than that of the misogynist. More intelligible, less fearful, more in power to shape. And the MGTOW man, on the other hand, sees distinction and nuance where the other two do not. He's not immune to his passions, but uses them as tools, subservient to his reason. He thinks deeply, vigorously, and cautiously. Not immune to error, but he's never satiated either. He's not satisfied merely to know how he fits in with the world. No, he needs to know how all things fit in with each other in the world. Some are not even satiated with that and will need to know how everything in reality fits in with everything else in reality. He abstracts higher than the MRA. I mean, he must. The answers he seeks are higher still. The MGTOW man will lead the best life, for it will be of his own forging. Like the MRA, who will not merely be pulled by his passions, so too the MGTOW man will not merely be pulled by social forces. So if honor, status, money, or the pleasures of the flesh has a place in a MGTOW man's life, there'll always be secondary considerations. So as we've seen the Civil War resolve into three different ways, all leading to three different lives, so too we can now see that each life was the result of getting close to the golden mean of anger. See, the man who was ruled by his passions chose the worst target. The second did better, but only insofar as he was able to abstract from his passions. Finally, the last man, taking the broadest and most nuanced view, a view he had to climb to a higher vantage point to see, a view still further from his passions, but not so far that he was never angered to begin with. He chose an even more suitable target for his anger. And in this way, these three different approaches correspond to the three lives Aristotle contemplated as paths that people choose for themselves towards happiness. You see, in the Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle sees that all decisions lead to some end, but some ends are only middle points towards other ends. So if you find a job, you don't do it for the sake of having a job, but for the sake of the money that you earn. But this money that you earn is not a final end either. You want money so you can spend it on other things, and in turn, these things that you buy have their own ends as well. But what is the end for which we do all of these things? I mean, what is that end that we want for absolutely no other reason than it being awesome in itself? Well, Aristotle says that is happiness. I mean, to reach this end of happiness, we need to cultivate our virtues. For after all, you can't say that a coward will reach happiness, nor a lush or a fool either. But to cultivate our virtues, virtues like temperance, prudence, courage, and justice, we must strive to reach this golden mean with our passions. Neither the coward nor the fool who rashly charges a tank with a knife will reach happiness. No, only the courageous man will. The golden mean between the fool and the foolhardy. So while cultivating our virtues, through striving for that golden mean, different types of lives will lead to different results. Some with a better chance at happiness than others. I mean, Aristotle says that a man either chooses a life of pleasure, of the passions, or one of action, so like politics, or finally, one of contemplation, with the contemplative life being the highest and the life of the passions the lowest, but the most common. You see, the misogynist is the life of the passions, the MRA that of activity, and MGTOW, finally, the contemplative life. You see, this is why you should not hate, and why you should not stay angry. Not because hate and anger are bad things, and not because society sets a certain expectation. No, you don't hate or stay angry because it directly undermines your own happiness. You forego hate and prolonged anger for selfish reasons. You do it because you're putting yourself first. You do it because you're putting your own interests before all else. So, as we've finally come to see, yes, it is possible that the red pill rage can lead to the hatred of women. But it is a choice that is logically inconsistent with MGTOW ideas. In fact, it disappears when a man finally comes to grips with MGTOW ideas. Thanks for listening. Cheers.